Unfortunately, I have stumbled upon this forum and I'm looking for some support. If you'd be so kind. A bit of background. I'm 30 male and my wife is 25 female. We've been married for 3 years and together for nearly 6 total. No children, no real assets whatsoever. More debt than there is cash in our checking. We rent a house and I'm the primary breadwinner, bringing home roughly 4K a month, and she nets around 1.5K. I work my tail off to provide her with the life she's accustomed to and now facing the unthinkable. My work family is pretty tight-knit. A coworker of nearly 3 years invited me to join in a recreational soccer league, which I've played in for 2 years now. My wife would attend every soccer game of mine, which I thought was a show of support for me. But in the back of my mind, I thought she just went for the alcohol. Then one hand in hand with it. Most nights I had games. I would take it very light on the alcohol, but she, as a spectator, would get pretty loose during the games and ride home with me. Pretty frequently after the games, a few of the guys and girls would get together in different places to hang out into the night. A few of the times we all came back to my place or we'd go to a bar, pizza joint, etc. Well, a couple of weeks ago, a group of them were going to get together at one of the guys' houses, a city away from me. I told them all after the game that I apologized. Wouldn't be going. I had work early next morning. Well, on the ride home, she texted one of the guys I considered as being a buddy, asking him to give her a ride over there. She asked me if it was okay for her to go while I was driving home, and I said no. I have work in the morning and I want to be with you tonight. She gave me the angry alcoholic silent treatment, and upon arriving home, I pulled on the driveway and a car pulled up in front of the house. It was my buddy. She had made the executive decision to go to this party, and I was pissed. I went to my buddy's car and told him I'm not okay with this and to leave. But then my wife got out of my car and into his, and they drove away. In my rage, I plugged in the dead iPad I had bought for her some years earlier. It was old, but I knew it was connected to her messaging/social media accounts. I saw exactly where she was and tried staying up until I finally fell asleep that night around 3 a.m. And she still wasn't home when I woke the next morning. She was in her bed. I didn't know when she had come home. I got up, got ready for work and left that morning without waking her or kissing her goodbye. The first and only time that had ever happened. I wanted her to know I was pissed. Well, before I left for work, I grabbed the iPad and threw it in my briefcase. I got to work that day, and after meeting and a few phone calls, I pull out the iPad and see it light up with a notification from a messaging app. Buddy is typing. I open the app and see a horrific exchange of messages that are supposed to self-destruct, but this app version must have been outdated as I was able to witness in real time their conversation recounting the night before, where Buddy is making references to them making love and other guys that had fun last night. I damn near lost it, but then it got worse. I watched as my wife instructs Buddy to send her a video of him masturbating, which he obliged to do and I unfortunately witnessed. I ran out of my office and into the bathroom and vomited profusely. I was shaking from what I just witnessed and got permission to leave work for the day after taking several hours to chill the hell out. I was legitimately afraid I was going to hurt someone or myself. I drive home and find her still sleeping on the bed. I put my stuff down and asked her to come downstairs. I sat across from her and asked her to tell me in detail everything that happened last night, which she did, but admitted any sort of sexual situations. Just drinking, playing pool and talking. That was it. I then asked her when she spoke to Buddy last. She said she had messaged him back and forth a bit that morning, but nothing in particular. Then I dropped a bomb. Would your story change if you knew? I watched the entire conversation you had with him this morning. She blew up into tears and first thing out of her mouth was, "Are you leaving me?" She came clean and told me that she couldn't really remember that clearly. But she had sex with Buddy and another teammate last night, and that's all she could remember. It may have been with more guys, but she couldn't remember. I was disgusted. I asked her if this was the first time, and surprisingly, she told me that there had been other times. One time was even in my house while I was sleeping upstairs. That was it. I was so known to it all. I helped her pack a bag and she left the house to go stay with family. And she pleaded for me not to tell anyone. I was alone in my horror story. And I'm now 2 weeks out from D-Day with no idea what to do. I really hope I don't take the cake for worst day experience, but it's hard to think of anything worse than catching your wife in a gangbang scenario with guys you've welcomed into your lives. And to find out that this has been going on for months with at least one of the guys. Now she wants to blame it all on alcohol and swears she's going to start all and wants to go through couples therapy. She wants us to come out of this together. I think it's a little too late, but I'm a chump and I feel the full range of PTSD emotions, including guilt. I don't know why I have a meeting with an attorney tomorrow. I like to think I'm making the right move. No matter how broken she is over being an alcoholic and really wanting to work this out, I can't even talk to her without imagining her being a lunch meat and a double sandwich. I can't trust her. I'm disgusted by her actions, repeated actions. I deserve a heck of a lot better than that. And I'm not perfect. But why in the hell do I feel so guilty? There's no reconciling this, right? I'm not the bad guy, am I? Look out. Here's an update. I truly appreciate all the advice, concern, and positivity that you all have sent my way. I realize that it's been almost a month since I posted about my experience, and I've had many people reach out to me, kindly checking in and wanting to know how I'm doing. Unfortunately, this situation has gone from horrific to unbelievably evil. There isn't a word that I can think of that does it justice. I apologize in advance for what I know is going to be a long update post, but it's the only way to get the full picture of how truly destroyed I feel. Days after the initial post, I took your guys' advice and made a few appointments with attorneys and one with the legal document preparation lady to keep my options open. My wife had no knowledge of these meetings. That's why we won a few days after the post with no contact directly. But she was adamant that this time she really was going to make an effort to get us into a marriage therapist, which I had been insisting upon for months before my D-Day. So we can try and see if there was any way of working through this. But I knew in my heart what my choice would inevitably be. She did succeed in getting us into a therapist's schedule, but it was going to be about a week and a half until we could get in. During that time, I was literally stalking her every move from that damn iPad. I was obsessing over it, watching every message come and go, checking Facebook, Snapchat, everything I possibly could. After a week and a half of scrutinizing every move she made digitally, I really had no further evidence, and I thought perhaps she was showing true remorse when it finally came time to see the therapist. He sat us down, asked us why we were there, and I told her to tell him the story in her own words. She left out some details, but most of it was there out on the table. The therapist turns his head to me after hearing it all and asked me, "How does this make you feel about your trust in her? How does it make you feel about your marriage?" I just shook my head in disbelief, in shock, and instead of answering his question, I replied, "If I don't say it out loud right now, I'm afraid I never will. There's no coming back from this for me. The marriage. This marriage is over. The vows were broken. My trust is shattered. And I think the only thing left to do is to get a divorce." My gut wrenched, and she completely blew up into hysterical crying. I continued, "I don't know what can be salvaged from this relationship, but the marriage is over. I meant what I said on the altar, and I'm not being true to myself if I don't recognize this as being broken and unfixable." At that point, I felt a slight sense of relief. Having stated it out loud in front of her in a neutral party that I was done. The remainder of the therapist appointment was spent on him explaining to her why my feelings and my decision were completely rational given the situation and calming her down. It actually couldn't have gone better, in my opinion. He insisted upon seeing us not as a couple, but separately, to see if he could help us as individuals first, and maybe on the horizon, perhaps a year from now, bring us together for discussion of reconciliation. I'll say it right now so you don't have to worry at this point. I don't even have the slightest intention of ever considering a reconciliation. But at least in the meantime, the individual therapy might actually do me some good. Now, before I continue, I knew at this point I was about to embark upon a legal journey which, if not amicable, could be disgustingly ugly and financially devastating to me. The breadwinner in a no-fault state, I've written all of this legal process out, but I'm admitting until things are locked in. Too risky to post online at the moment. The overarching point of the legal process is that I have to keep things amicable right now. Let's fast forward roughly a week and a half. By now, we've both had at least one individual therapy session each, and her narrative to the entire family is that we're ending the marriage because of the breaking of vows. But we're both trying to heal ourselves right now. She's still staying with family, and I continue my obsession with constantly searching her digital presence for any sign that she was continuing her disgusting habits. As many of you had suggested she would, not saying it's your fault, I would have been searching anyway. It wasn't until one night last week that I realized there was a place I hadn't ever checked, the App Store. I went to the app download history of the iCloud account and saw that almost 2 weeks prior to that evening, she had downloaded a secret texting app onto her phone. My gut wrenched. I realized in one fell swoop that this entire time she's gone out of her way to hide some sort of messaging from me, knowing I had her iPad, which she insisted upon me keeping so I can begin to trust her again. But I really think to this day that she didn't realize that an app downloaded on one iCloud device can be seen in the history from any iCloud-connected device. I needed to know what the communications were within that app. I wasn't even in control of my body thinking back to those moments. I downloaded the app onto her iPad, tried a few of her most common log combos, and voila, the truth. She not only had been messaging Buddy on this app since after our first therapy appointment together, but they had been continuing to have sex with one another during times in which she knew I'd be out of the area. I puked. I cried. It was 3 in the morning on a weeknight. I went into the restroom and started grabbing all the prescription strength medications I could find. I went back into my room with an overflowing handful of a sort of pills that without a doubt would have been effective in ending my life. I sat on the edge of my bed, sobbing, ready to end it. I picked up my phone and tried to call my mom. No answer. My dad. No answer. My sister. She answered. I told her what I had just discovered. Through violent outbursts of tears. And she could tell I was on the verge of losing it. She didn't know I had the pills in my hand, but she did insist keeping me on the phone, albeit in the middle of the night, until I had calmed down. It took about an hour, but I was finally numb again, and after hanging up the phone, I went back into the bathroom and poured the pills back into one of the bottles. I washed my hands, then returned to bed to try to get at least a couple of hours sleep. That never came as hours passed. I realized that I needed to go to work. I couldn't stand to be in that house or that moment any longer. As I got dressed, I threw the bottle of pills into my briefcase, along with the iPad, both of which upon arrival to my office, I promptly gave to my most trusted coworker and asked him to lock it up in his desk and not return it to me no matter what, no questions asked. He obliged and gave me an understanding pat on the shoulder as I walked away. So now I've done it. I got what I was asking for, what I had been searching for. Undeniable proof that not only is my wife a cheater, but she was also a cold-blooded liar. I struggled for days on end to try to decide what to do with the information I had discovered. On one hand, I wanted so badly to call her out to every possible family member, friend or acquaintance and let the whole world know what she truly is.